On the morning of the 6th of June 1944, the British 50th Northumbrian Division began landing on Gold Beach on the Normandy coastline as part of Operation Overlord. Leading the 50th ashore were the 69th and 231st Brigades, which both had 2 infantry battalions forward to conduct the initial assault on the beach. In 69th Brigade sector, this was conducted by the 5th Battalion, the East Yorkshire Regiment, and the 6th Battalion, the Green Howards, with the latter's war diary recording that the landing craft made their hazardous dash from the mainland in a sea that did not favour a landing so important, whilst Allied cruisers and destroyers heavily engaged enemy shore batteries. As 0737 A and D companies, being the forward companies, assaulted the beach. Against minimal opposition, the 6th Green Howards landed and began moving off inland, with its D company heading to its first objective, which was a German gun battery at Mont Fleury. Initially, this advance went as planned, with 2 platoons from D company making a swift move forward and getting into the area of the battery. However, no sooner had they done so did a German machine gun open fire on their rear sections, effectively cutting off the 2 platoons from the rest of D company, which was, in the meantime, still making its way forward. Among those who was pushing up with the rest of D company was Company Sergeant Major Stanley Hollis, who, on reaching the vicinity of a house with a distinctive circular driveway, identified the location of the German machine gunner, who was sighted in a camouflaged brook pit in a nearby field. Knowing that the 2 forward platoons were cut off and at risk of being wiped out, Sergeant Major Hollis charged across the open field and reached the enemy position, where he began firing into the pit with his Sten gun before throwing a grenade inside. Moments later, the sergeant jumped down into the neighbouring trench and found 2 German soldiers killed and a couple more wounded. With this enemy position neutralised, Sergeant Hollis realised that the trench extending out from the rear of the Tobruk pit ran to an underground shelter about 100 metres away. Like before, the Sergeant Major moved off alone to secure it, and as he began to make his approach through the trench system, up to 30 German soldiers appeared from the shelter, with their hands raised above their heads and surrendering to the sergeant. Thus, within a few minutes, Company Sergeant Major Stanley Hollis had single-handedly secured the German strongpoint, and in doing so he enabled the rest of D Company to continue forward and secure the Mont Fleury gun battery, with the 6th Green Howards war diary noting, D Company attacked the heavily concreted gun positions in area of Mont Fleury. The storming of this position was highly successful and the battalion suffered surprisingly low casualties. Following the capture of the gun battery, the 6th Green Howards continued to expand the beachhead, with elements securing another German strongpoint near Mouvaines, prior to the battalion focusing its attention on the village of Crépon. On approaching the outskirts of the village, German gunfire temporarily halted the battalion, and in the early afternoon of the 6th of June, D Company, with support from A Company, was tasked with securing the village. Again, Company Sergeant Major Stanley Hollis was at the forefront of this clearance, when he and a platoon of infantry were tasked with clearing a farmhouse on the village's western edge. On arriving at this objective, the platoon successfully cleared the farmhouse without incident, after which the platoon made its way outside and into the adjacent fields, where, as Sergeant Major Stanley Hollis recalls, I was leading the platoon along this alleyway when I took a careful look round this corner, and straight away a shot and a bullet hit the wall. Now I got back pretty smartly, stood for a few seconds, then had another look round. Peering round the wall for a second time, the sergeant spotted a camouflaged German field gun with supporting machine guns, sighted in a nearby hedgerow. Immediately, Sergeant Major Hollis returned to the farmhouse, grabbed a Piat, before making his way back to the alleyway with an additional 9 to 10 soldiers, 2 of whom were Bren gunners. I got a Piat gun and I brought 2 Bren gunners up with me. The other 7 or 8 chaps dashed across through the orchard to give me cover and fire while I crawled through the rhubarb, but they were immediately killed, all of them. I continued to crawl through the rhubarb to the forward edge, where I put the bomb in the Piat and fired it, but it was no good and it fell short. After the detonation of the Piat round, Sergeant Major Hollis became the focus of the Germans in the hedgerow, with a bullet grazing his right cheek and a round from the field gun striking a building behind him. With his position untenable, the sergeant crawled back through the rhubarb patch and rejoined the rest of his platoon at the farmhouse. However, he soon realised that the two brain gunners had not withdrawn with him, and so he himself picked up a brain gun, walked back to the orchard, and proceeded to fire from the hip into the hedgerow. I ran out into the orchard with the Bren, firing it from my hip, and I shot up the far hedge. At the same time, I shouted to those two lads to come back. They did, and by the time I'd emptied the magazine of the Bren gun, they were able to make it back to the farmhouse. Following this brief engagement, Sergeant Hollis's platoon withdrew from the area of the farm and linked up with other elements of D Company, which had in the meantime been securing other parts of Crépon, and by 1500 on the 6th of June 1944, most of the village was in British hands. The capture of Crépon opened up the centre line for the 6th Green Howards, who, by day's end, were established in the area just west of St Gabriel, having advanced roughly 9 kilometres inland from Gold Beach. Undoubtedly, the actions of Company Sergeant Major Stanley Hollis played a crucial role in this successful advance, and on the 10th of October 1944 he was awarded the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest military decoration. The citation for this Victoria Cross concludes with, "In the course of a magnificent day's work, he displayed the utmost gallantry, and on 2 separate occasions his courage and initiative prevented the enemy from holding up the advance at critical stages. It was largely through his heroism and resource that the company's objectives were gained and casualties were not heavier."